Hello again, 240. In this video, we will begin Chapter 12, Play for Pay. Prior to the introduction of commercial television, only professional baseball enjoyed widespread popularity, and boxing and horse racing, as we've been talking about. Television helped undercut America's pastime to the point where its popularity fell behind professional football and was even challenged by NASCAR, auto racing, as the nation's primary spectator sport. Professional basketball enjoyed a surge of popularity during the 1980s and the 1990s, and even for a time, hockey and soccer enthusiasts thought that with nationwide expansion, their sports would become another spectator sport with broad appeal. The story of professional sports is much more than the games played because they became enmeshed in a continuum of labor disputes and aggravating strikes, the movement of franchises from city to city by owners seeking sweeter financial deals, and endless jousting with television networks for extended coverage and higher audience ratings. Although the sports fans focused on game scores and championships won and lost, businessmen operated those teams and depended upon inordinately skilled athletes who were supremely interested in the size of their paychecks and job security, just like employees everywhere. And a tale of two football cities, ladies and gentlemen. Cleveland, Ohio is a football town. Its population is descended from immigrants who came to work in its bustling mills, foundries, factories, and refineries during the two great human migrations that transformed the United States. Between 1865 and 1914, 25 million persons left their homes in Eastern and Southern Europe for America, and between the 1890s and the 1960s, an estimated 15 million rural Southerners left small towns and farms for the urban North and West to work in those places. And from the moment the Cleveland Browns played their first games in the new All-American Football Conference in 1946, the residents of the city and the surrounding region enthusiastically supported the team. On autumn Sundays, 70,000 fans flocked to aging and decrepit Municipal Stadium, the much criticized mistake by the lake, to cheer for their team. More popular than the baseball Indians, the orange, brown, and white-clad Browns epitomized this hard-nosed industrial city and its ethnically and racially diverse population. After an extended championship-filled run under Coach Paul Brown that you've read about, young owner Art Modell fired him in 1963, and the fortunes fell into decline. Not soon after, they were a good team through the 60s, but it mirrored the sagging economy of this prototypical Rust Belt city, the Northeast, the Rust Belt. The Browns won their last NFL championship in 1964 on the strength of the running of Jim Brown, who retired 2 seasons later to become a Hollywood actor, and the talented squad that Brown had left behind. Soon thereafter, Cleveland had entered into a devastating economic decline and became the butt of comedians' jokes about a Cuyahoga River so polluted with industrial waste that it actually caught on fire. In 1969, the Evening News showed the improbable picture of city firemen squirting water on a river to put out ugly, toxic flames. From the perspective of 2001, Cleveland native Joe Posnanski recalled, "The old Browns were the heartbeat of old Cleveland. Lives were built around those Browns. All week long, they were the pulse that kept the town going. Monday, you reviewed the game. Tuesday, you argued who should be quarterback. Tuesday, you wondered why they were not getting sacks. Thursday, you called into the radio station to be the 9th caller and win those tickets. Friday, you were in love. And the games on Sunday were like nothing else. It was always 25 degrees colder inside old Cleveland Stadium, and you screamed against the wind. Cleveland Browns football was everything. Everything." Even the futility of the mediocre Browns teams, as well as the baseball Indians, and watching the rival Pittsburgh Steelers enjoy an extended championship run during the 1970s, the Steelers won 4 Super Bowls in that time, did not deter the Browns faithful. During the 1980s, on 3 separate agonizing occasions, the Browns were thwarted in playoff games just short of the Super Bowl. In the divisional round in 1980, Oakland intercepted NFL MVP Brian Sipe his pass in the end zone, and in 1987, Denver Broncos quarterback John Elway engineered a last-minute 98-yard drive to tie the game and set up a Denver overtime victory. So close to the Super Bowl. The Browns have never made an appearance in the Super Bowl. And the following year, Browns running back Ernest Byner was heading for a tying touchdown when a tackler stripped him of the ball at the 2-yard line. After those disasters, the Browns fans had good reason to believe that their team was suffering from a diabolical curse. In Cleveland in those days, Poznanski recalls, there was desperation. When the Browns won, you felt alive. When they lost, you were left with snow piled halfway up your window and potholes the size of Olympic swimming pools and a million gray days and a million Cleveland jokes. Just like Buffalo, the special connection between the team and town ended abruptly on November 6, 1995. At that time, that Modell announced that he was moving the Browns to Baltimore, citing a lucrative offer from city and state officials that included $65 million in upfront money to cover transition costs, the construction of a 70,000-seat stadium that his team would use rent-free, and substantial supplemental income from luxury box rental, seat licenses that you have to purchase before you even buy a ticket, parking, concessions, soda pop, hot dogs, beer, and stadium advertising. Modell was peeved at Cleveland's politicians because a new baseball park had been built for the Indians and a new arena for the basketball Cavaliers, while his demands for a modern stadium had been ignored. Incredulity and shock swept through northern Ohio, and it produced a tsunami of angry recriminations. In 1961, the 34-year-old Modell convinced a Cleveland bank to loan him $4 million to buy the Browns. Over the years, he was viewed as a popular community leader, but that ended abruptly with his shocking announcement. Radio talk show lines lit up as fans excoriated the pariah. Angry messages, including a few death threats, were furiously dispatched. Newspaper editorials denounced Modell's greed and perfidy. Politicians from city council to the U.S. Senate gave fiery speeches, and city officials hustled a team of lawyers into court in a futile effort to stop the move. Resolutions came streaming out of city government. Clergy preached sermons about the sacred value of community and personal trust, and conversations at the local watering holes were animated. What Modell failed to realize was that, as Poznanski lamented, was that the Cleveland Browns weren't a football team. They were religion and family and history, and the only pride of a city that had taken too many punches. The NFL agreed to put a new expansion team in Cleveland by 1999, and Modell permitted the expansion franchise to retain team colors, name, and 50 years of records. A public contest in Baltimore renamed his franchise the Ravens in recognition of the city's brooding writer Edgar Allan Poe. While Cleveland fans felt terribly violated, giddy Baltimore was repaid for the loss they had suffered when their Colts, the storied franchise that in 1958 had ridden the powerful right arm of legendary Johnny Unitas to the NFL championship in the greatest game ever played, as you'll recall, had literally left town in the middle of the night in 1984. For several years, the Colts' irascible owner Robert Irsay had been demanding that Maryland taxpayers build his team a new stadium, but when a grouchy Maryland legislature passed a bill that permitted the state to use its power of eminent domain to wrest control of the team away from the owner, Irsay decided to take the best offer. It came from Mayor Thomas Hudnut of Indianapolis, who was seeking a tenant for a new 65,000-seat Hoosier Dome. Irsay accepted his offer after learning of impending legal action by the Maryland Attorney General that would have tied his team up in court for years. In the dead of night, to avoid a possible court injunction the next day, workers frantically loaded office files and equipment, film and projectors, team uniforms, even weight training equipment onto a fleet of 12 moving vans. Not until the last van had crossed state lines did Mayor Hudnut announce that the Baltimore Colts were now the Indianapolis Colts. In response to irate Maryland fans, Irsay snapped, "This is my team. I own it, and I'll do whatever I want with it." It was more than a decade before Baltimore again became the host city of an NFL team. In 1995, a journalist reported that 37 of the existing 113 professional teams came from somewhere else. Noting that over the course of 33 years, Art Modell had become a symbol of stability in the NFL and had openly opposed awarding an expansion franchise to Baltimore just 2 years previously, another journalist concluded, what makes the Modell move so galling is that Modell is so mainstream in the league. He had helped negotiate those TV contracts with Pete Rozelle. The thinking goes that if Modell goes, anybody will go. Modell became the toast of the town in Baltimore, but he wisely never returned to Cleveland. But life goes on, and the new Browns, owned by locals who, of course, pledged never to move the team, began play in 1999 in a magnificent new stadium, courtesy of the Cuyahoga County taxpayers. It was just as big and spiffy as the stadium that had lured Art Modell to the shores of the Chesapeake Bay. And in 19 seasons since, the Browns have won 88 games and lost 217. And they've only had one playoff appearance during that time. They have not made the playoffs since 2002, and they've only had 2 winning seasons. Mr. Modell, he passed away in September of 2012. This is an AP photo by Dave Martin. This is his obituary from CBS.com. And he lived to see the Ravens win the Super Bowl in 2001. And in this 2012 season, the Ravens will win it again. And they've been a model team in the NFL in 22 seasons. They've had 11 winning seasons, winning 204 games, losing 169, and tying 1 with 10 playoff appearances and those 2 Super Bowl titles. Here's Mr. Irsay sparring with Maryland reporters. This is an AP photo from Bill Smith. And Irsay will pass away in 1997. His son James now owns the team. And the Colts will win Super Bowl 41 in Miami over the Chicago Bears. And that's been their only Super Bowl title during this time period.